As authors, it's our job to hone our skills and to really level up our writing so that we're faster, stronger, better, and we create stories that are more profitable for us, which means we cannot just rely on writing those novels to get better. We actually have to do things like writing exercises and leveling up our skills in other ways as well. So there is something that I do inside of my author life that you can do as well. It's a very easy writing exercise, and it doesn't actually require you to write anything. This is a mental challenge where you're going to be learning different steps on how to plot your book and causality. You're going to learn decision-making skills. You're going to level up what you're doing to be a faster, stronger, better writer. And this is something, again, you can do without having to write anything. So what we do is play a little game called What If, and we can play this in two ways. You can play this by choosing something in our modern world and playing it forward, or you can choose some big abstract future and reverse engineer it to see how we got there. Now, I use this inside of my dystopians and my sci-fi novels because it's modern world in the future, and it's a lot of that causality and how we got to these points, but you can use this for your fantasy, your magical fantasies, or your contemporaries, or your whatever. We are just playing this game of, if this happens, what is going to become of this? Or if that happens in the future, how did we get there? So for me, I am going to pick, if I'm playing it forward, one thing in our contemporary world, and I'm going to play that forward. So let's just say we're going to look around, we're going to pick one thing, and we're going to see what storyline we can create out of that. Let's say a cell phone. So if we have our contemporary cell phones, we're going to think what our contemporary world is going to look like. We understand medicine, we understand the law, we understand academia, we understand the things that we're doing right now with science and the medicine field and the legal field and government and all of these things. Now, knowing this, knowing the changes we've made over the last 10 years, 100 years, knowing where we're probably going to go in the future, we can now play into this. Well, what's a cell phone going to be 10 years from now? What's a cell phone going to be 100 years from now? How are we going to use these things? Cell phones have advanced to the point where we went from having to hit a button 3 times to get the third letter on that button to being able to access the internet and to live stream and to do all these really cool things. So in the future, we're going to have even more features inside of cell phones, right? Where might we go with that? So now we start to play it forward. Well, let's say cell phones get to the point where they can understand our biometrics. They already understand how to read our faces and our fingerprints. They understand a lot about us, but because they're constantly with us in our hands, in our pockets, near our bodies, maybe in the future, they're going to start to be able to understand who we are a little bit more. They can hear the things that we say, but they can also monitor things like heart rate, and they can monitor changes within our bodies and all of these things. So how might that play forward in a dystopian novel or in a sci-fi novel or even in a fantasy novel where we're adding that magic? What is that going to look like? So now we take those steps forward. Now our cell phones can monitor all of our biometrics. They're going to know when things start to turn and we're starting to get sick. They're going to know if we start to get some kind of disease. They're going to start to know if our cells start to go out of sync with each other. They're going to be able to stop a lot of our medical problems. But then what happens? Now that these cell phones can understand us and read us and warn us of these things so we can start to handle them much earlier, now we have, you know, the medical field or even potentially the government in on all of this. They understand this information and they can use it to control different situations, to fix different situations, to hurt different situations. How can we play that out? And so you can go forward with this and pick one of those routes and just play through it. Go as far as you can until you come up with a really cool book concept, and now you have all of this back history on how we got to that point. Which brings us to the next version of this. I love to reverse engineer things. So I could have people give me a concept. I was playing through one the other day, which I really liked, and I'm probably not gonna get all of those really good points in there, but boy, did I come up with some good ones. Let's talk about a future where love is not an option, where your partner is chosen by the government. How did we get there? We know that's a very big trope inside of dystopia, or at least it was in the past, not so much relevant right now, but it might come back. And with that in mind, if we don't have love and we have to go with what the government says we need to marry, how did that get there? Well, the government would need access from something, and I kind of looked around and thought, well, what do we have in our modern world? We've got, again, our cell phones, we have things like dating apps, our dating culture has dramatically changed. So what's the difference between dating apps and getting to the point where the government's telling us who we're marrying and love is not a thing? There's a big gap of space there, so let's reverse engineer it. The government has control of this now. How did they get control of this? Well, they're going to be using those dating apps. Dating apps have to have evolved in these hundreds of years. How were they going to have changed? So at that point, the apps have to be really, really strongly aware of people and culture and, you know, different standards with how good you are at school and how objective you are on things and how you're able to do things and how you see the world and how you know, interact interact with people and all those different things to then find good matches. So they're finding good matches, and the government's using this to then orchestrate whatever it is that they're doing in the future. And at that point, we need to reverse engineer it even more. How did the dating apps get to this point? Well, I backtracked it all the way to a dating app that has some kind of elite service where they are going to be finding decent men. We know that's a hard thing, ladies, I understand. And they're going to be picking like the elite men, and they do not necessarily have to have elite women. They just have to have women who are going to find these elite men, and it's going to work really, really well with them. From there, it kind of moves forward a little bit where we now have more women and elite men, which means we're going to open it up to more men, which means we can open it up to more women and more people can get involved. And so I went through this whole process. I have a very long list, which I'm not going to tell you too much on because it's actually a very good list and I might have to write that book. But it goes from having a dating app that stands out among the dating apps in our modern society that has really almost kind of like a matchmaker service, built it so that they have the best fits possible for these elite men to get women in, and now women have people that are actually good, and we don't have to have like on the floor, bars on the floor level things, all the stuff, you know. If you've been on TikTok, you know. And then we go from there, bringing in a broader group, and now we're matching those people based on their best interests, and we're getting the higher level, the medium level, the lower level. We're getting all the different things in there, and people are finding really good matches. From there, now we go back to an algorithm system rather than a matchmaking system, and we have the ability to start matching more people. But because it is really good, it's one of those things a little bit more elite. It's harder to get into these apps, so you have to be, you know, interviewed and accepted to get in there. In the first couple of levels, those elites, it's really hard to get into. So now it's a really high standard, and if you manage to get into it, you're considered really, really good. At that point, everybody wants to get into it, but not everybody can. As they start to open up, more people can then come into this situation, right? Are we tracking this? Are we following along? More people can come into the situation, at which point we go back to that algorithmic version of this, and more people can find their matches, because now it had been elite and it had been really hard to get into it. More people were then getting into it, and now more people are expected to come into it. Now it's less of an elite thing and more of a standard. So we track this forward or track this backward, and we have something that is no longer just elite, but it's something that is standard. Then from standard, it becomes practice. Everybody is doing it. So now if you're not involved in this, you are not going to find the best possible match. We get really heavy into marketing at this point, which I love. You guys know I love that kind of thing. And we market it heavily toward, if you're not on this, you are not going to get a good match, period. And so from there, we then have the ability to keep going with this to this perfected match, to the standard. And then we then have to make sure it's a little bit harder to get into. Not everybody can get into it. You have to get into it when you turn a certain age. 26 years old, you're allowed to have access to this app. I just made that number up. The 26-year-old are allowed to have access to this app, and so until that point you are not dating, you're not getting married, because the standard is to be on this app and to be a part of this algorithm that's going to find you your best possible matches and all the things. And so we make it a little bit more exclusive, and then it becomes standard practice. So then everyone on their 26th birthday is then allowed onto this app. You have a 1-year period of kind of like figuring things out and people getting to know you and finding your best match, and then on your 27th birthday you are now given your match. Do you see how this has been orchestrated by the app, by the app owners, and potentially by the government? There's a lot that you can put into it, and we played it forward and we played it backward. So you can find anything, a camera, you can find your cell phone, you can find the way the cars move. You can pick one thing and either play it forward to see what you can create in the future, or you can pick an abstract future and play it back to see how you got there. So you're reverse engineering it, or you're playing it forward to figure out what to do in your book. Now with that, because it's structured the way that it is, you're working toward that ultimate goal of deciding how this thing happens or happened. And with that, you're now making decisions. You can see in front of you several different paths. How can cell phones change? A, B, or C? You're picking a way and playing that forward. Every time you come to decisions, you're picking a path and playing it forward. So your decision-making skills are being leveled up. You are able to make those decisions faster, stronger, and better, and you can play through to see how those things actually fall into place, or you can reverse engineer to see how it ended up getting to that point. The goal of this is to take just a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes while you're taking your shower, or 15 minutes while you're driving your car, whatever it happens to be, and you're playing it forward to get all those details in there. You're kind of plotting out a story without actually needing to plot out a story. This is not something you're going to write. Now you might come up with something and you're like, this is it, baby. And then you want to write that down at some point to then write that story later on. But this really is just decision-making skills to see how things are played out inside of stories. This helps to level up your ability to make those quick decisions, to get somewhere fast, and to figure out that causality. What happened here to get to here to get to here? What are those points in between? This is a really good way to level up what you're doing, to change how you're going to see things, and you don't have to then write it. This is not going to be something that's time consuming. It's something you do while you're doing other things, and it enables you to really engage your mind in storytelling, which then could help you to either come up with a book topic that you might really like, or to come up with things that you can implement into the story you're writing right now. So I recommend doing this both inside and outside of your genre. Whatever you're writing in, try it inside of your genre. But then also try this outside of your genre, because it's going to help you to see other things in new ways. I love to play these things out in genres I'm not writing in, because it helps me to understand the world around me, and because those things have different tropes and different ways of doing things, I can then pull some of this into my stories as well. So simple writing exercises are going to be incredibly helpful. This does not, of course, replace other types of writing exercises that you want to be doing as you're going with this, and of course studying your different skills like writing and marketing and books and genres and all those things. So make sure you're constantly leveling up what you're doing inside of your writer life, and hit the subscribe and notification bell, because I'm dropping videos all the time to help you level up inside of your writing career and inside of the book world. If you've got questions on this or any of my books, go ahead and drop those down below. I would love to get them answered for you, and I'll see you in the next episode.